You're listening to Northwoods Church Matters, a podcast of Northwoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Hey guys, welcome back to the Northwoods Church Matters podcast. I'm here with our lead pastor, Bobby Pell, and today we're going to talk about the Southern Baptist Convention. And the reason to do that is we have a whole lot of newer folks that are coming to the church, praise God. Yep. But if you are foreign to SBC world, it may be a little daunting, confusing. There's a whole lot of acronyms that are there and terms that are used. If you grew up in an SBC church in the South, you're probably familiar with some of these things, but often we'll have a speaker from the different acronym organizations that we have, and people are like, who is that? Who is this? Yeah. And so that's the reason to talk about this today. So I've already given away the first question, but Bobby, is Northwoods Church part of a denomination?
Yeah, so that's actually a more difficult question than one might think.
Yes, it is.
The technical answer to that is no, in that the Southern Baptist Convention is not a traditional denomination. Well, there is no hierarchy of anyone telling us what to do, which is the normal picture of a denomination. Southern Baptist Convention is called a Southern Baptist Convention for a reason. We are a convening group of churches which exist for business 2 days a year. Mm-hmm. And that happens in June every year. Our church has been kind to send messengers to that. This year it was in Dallas, Texas. The business of the convention happens there. I will tell you, it's like sausage. It's a little messy because you just sort of have to think of the largest congregational business meeting that you've ever seen. Any messenger can walk up to any microphone and make any crazy motion.
And they do.
And they do.
And they do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What we've learned over the years is that if you give the messengers who represent churches that come to that convention, if you give them enough time, they almost always make the right decision.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
And I think the best way to describe the Southern Baptist Convention is in terms of bottom up or top down. You think of the Catholic Church, that it's a very top-down hierarchy where you have the Pope on top, and then you have other leading officials that are making decisions for the rest of the churches. And the Southern Baptist Convention stands that on its head, that we are a group of independent churches that voluntarily choose to cooperate with each other.
That's right.
And so the main reason we cooperate with each other is for the sake of missions and advancing the gospel around the world. But we don't have a denomination hierarchy.
That's right.
That's telling us what to do. People hear about these different organizations that we have, and they think, well, these organizations tell us as local churches what to do. That's just not the case.
That's right.
For example, SCBI, which is our state convention, they assist us and work alongside us in sharing the gospel. They don't tell us what to do.
That's right.
And so that's a huge difference from other denominations. Now, I think the caveat to that is the SBC is kind of like a club that sometimes you have to kick people out of the club.
That's right.
That we all agree on theology and how a church should be run and matters of missions. And there's often times when, as a convention, we say, look, one of these things is not like the other, and you're it. You just can't be a part of us anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's some of the rare top-down stuff that happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Convention.
100%. The truth is over the last 3 or 4 years, there have been some high-profile churches that both the convention made a choice to remove Rick Warren's church, Saddleback.
Yeah.
Then Stephen Furtick's church, they chose to remove themselves from the convention because they recognized that there was a doctrinal lack of alignment. And so what you've just said is just 100% true. We make a call. People go and represent our church. This year, I think there was between 10 and 11,000 messengers in Dallas, which I was actually surprised it was that low because it's in Dallas. But anyhow, there were 10 to 11,000 messengers representing churches from all across the different states. And they made decisions as representatives of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Yeah. I mean, most of the stuff that happens in the Southern Baptist Convention is very business meeting, mundane stuff that you'll experience at a typical Southern Baptist business meeting.
That's right.
Let's approve a budget.
That's right.
Let's hire somebody for this job.
That's right.
So I think one thing that people don't see behind the scenes is that I've been a part of Indiana Baptist for a while now. And
your wife was the secretary to the executive director. That's how I met Dana.
Yeah, that's how we connected.
That's right.
But I think there's always behind the scenes more discussions with churches interested in joining the SBC than there are discussions about churches leaving the SBC.
I had a conversation last week with a church that reached out from here in Newburgh asking about what would we need to do to potentially join being a part of the Southern Baptist Convention, and would I be willing to come and make a presentation? What's happening within the Southern Baptist Convention is that the Southern Baptist Convention has become a little bit of the beacon of conservative theology. And what's happening from a missions perspective is we are the largest missions organization that you can go and be a part of for international missions. I mean, just to use Zach and Courtney for a second, if the International Mission Board agrees to send the missionaries to come alongside us as Northwoods and say, yes, we're going to support and come alongside you as Northwoods to help send Zach and Courtney, these are people who will never have to go and raise another dollar. I mean, it's amazing what happens. Their retirement is paid for. Their schooling of their kids are paid for. The travel back and forth from the States is paid for. I mean, it's crazy.
They do their taxes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I would join the International Mission Board for that. Send me to Panama. Just do my taxes. That would be great.
So what's happening is that I think churches recognize, well, we believe what they believe. We like what they're doing in missions, and we would get a discount in being a part of one of their seminaries. Why aren't we in?
Yeah.
And so they're starting to process this, and that's why the questions are happening. And it's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. There's always kind of the hair on fire comments in the media about the decline of the SBC. And honestly, behind the scenes, more discussion of churches joining the SBC. Right. Let's talk through kind of the acronyms and some of the jargon that we've got so that people can understand it.
Sure.
So what is the Cooperative Program? This is kind of a foundational type question for what the SBC does.
Yeah, the Cooperative Program is a term that we use as Southern Baptists that is the way churches give through the Cooperative Program in order to fund our Southern Baptist missions agencies and our seminaries. It is cooperative in the sense of it's not forced. Each church determines what percentage or maybe even a flat amount of money that they are choosing to give. Northwoods has never given below 6%. I believe today we are giving 7.5% through the Cooperative Program, and then we designate another 4% for missions that are specifically related to Northwoods and mission trips and what we may do locally, those type of things. So it's about 11.5% of everything that comes in goes to missions. If you compare that to many churches, that's a lot. And we're always trying to figure out ways to give more. And so the Cooperative Program is the way that Southern Baptists choose to cooperate together. The idea of that when we cooperate together, we can do more together.
Yeah.
And it is the way that we do missions.
Yeah. So the Cooperative Program is like the Southern Baptist piggy bank. It's the bank account. And so all of our Southern Baptist churches should be giving to the Cooperative Program so that we build up the piggy bank so that we can send more missionaries around the world and support missions.
That's right.
Yeah. So there's not a ton of like administrative overhead people that are out there in the SBC. I mean, it's really a lot of missions.
That's right.
So speaking of missions, what is the IMB? What does that stand for and what does it do?
Yeah, so approximately 50% of what goes through the Cooperative Program goes to the International Mission Board, which your mother worked at.
Yes, she did. And Richmond, Virginia is the headquarters.
That's correct. And so let's also address another little interesting tidbit about Northwoods. So anytime I've ever been able to bring someone to Northwoods that was the president of the International Mission Board, which is a huge deal in Southern Baptist life, people at Northwoods are like, Who is this? So what?
Why isn't Bobby preaching today?
I mean, to us on staff, it's sort of hilarious. I mean, because Paul Chitwood came, who's president of the International Mission Board, and our people are like, whatever.
Right. We had Nick Ripken, who wrote a missions book, who is
that's right.
One of the, just did a fabulous work through the International Mission Board, or God did a fabulous work through him.
That's right.
But people were just like, who's this guy? So, welcome to north of the Mason-Dixon line.
So the International Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention is the largest Protestant missions agency in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And in our case, as Southern Baptists, it is conservative. It is theologically in line with the way we think as Northwoods. And we have missionaries everywhere. Let me just say, this goes back to the Southern Baptist Convention when it meets. The most important thing that happens in that meeting is what they call the sending celebration. And at that sending celebration this year, there were over 50 missionaries presented to the convention with their names, the area that they were going to serve, and the church that sent them. The very first one this year was Zach and Courtney.
From Northwoods.
They were the very first missionaries that took the stage. This year, about 60% of the missionaries that were presented, they could not be presented so that you could see their face. They were behind a screen because they were going to places around the world that you could not know that they were going there as missionaries.
Right.
Your monies every week that are going through the Cooperative Program are literally going to places like Afghanistan, to Iraq, to Iran, to South Sudan, even in North Korea. They're going to places in China. They're reaching places around the world that would be very difficult for us as Northwoods to ever send a missionary.
Yeah, or any individual church.
That's exactly right. And that's something I think that, A, it needs to be known, and then B, it needs to be celebrated.
If you're not an SBC person, or you grew up in a non-denominational church, or even some of the mainline denominations, like if somebody wanted to go out as a missionary, typically what happens is that they have to self-fund. And you don't see that here at Northwoods for the reason that we participate in the Cooperative Program, the big missions piggy bank. And so because we cooperate together, there's a bigger pool of money, and we have an organization that's able to send missionaries out without having them, for lack of a better term, beg from different churches for missions money.
I grew up in an independent Baptist church, and I would guess conservatively, we would have 20 missionaries a year that would come through our church. Some of those missionaries we funded, and they were on quote unquote furlough, which for those of you who do not know, furlough means the missionary comes back to rest.
Which is what Nick and Melissa are doing right now.
That's correct.
From Oak Hill Baptist.
That's right. Who are our Southern Baptist missionaries.
Yeah.
They're supposed to come home and rest from the field. But what was happening was these missionaries were coming home to go and make sure that their support, financial support, continued. And any support that had fallen, as a matter of fact, they in some cases would have had to go back to the field in order to rest. And then the other group of people were people who were simply trying to get to the field for the first time, raising money. So the experience in Southern Baptist life for missions is totally different, if I could put it this way, than normal missions. Normal missions is not that way. This is much better.
So speaking of missions, we have two missions organizations. One is the International Mission Board, and the other is the North American Mission Board. And as the world gets smaller, like the lines between these two organizations kind of blur a little bit more. But can you talk about the North American Mission Board and what they do?
Yeah.
You used to work for them, technically.
I did, yeah. I was the church planning team leader for the state convention. And when we first moved here in 1993 to Greencastle, I started a church in Greencastle, New Life Baptist Church. I received funding from the North American Mission Board. When we moved here to Evansville in 2002, we received funding from the North American Mission Board. North American Mission Board does what the International Mission Board does, but does it for here in Canada and the United States, which is they support church planting mainly, and now they support evangelism. So they do basically church planting and evangelism in North America. A difference is if you are a missionary with the International Mission Board, everything's paid for. A difference in North America is you receive some monies from the North American Mission Board for church planting, and then there is an expectation that either the sending church and the core group that is happening from the church plant and potentially churches that are partnering will basically pay the rest of that church planter's salary. But they do a good job of giving that church planter a base of financial funds and training to get off the ground. And I'm grateful for what they do and recognize that they have a hard work. To your point, though, Matt, things are getting blurred.
Yeah.
A few years ago, there was a new agency that was created. I actually have the shirt on today that says Send Relief. Send Relief is an agency that both the International Mission Board and the North American Mission Board do together. And so basically what this is disaster relief falls under that, but it also addresses disasters that happen around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Send Relief goes and does ministry there, meeting physical needs, but also spiritual needs, whether it's an earthquake, a tsunami, or whether or not it's tornadoes in the Midwest. These are opportunities that the Southern Baptist Convention goes and puts boots on the ground, representing us and representing the kingdom of Christ.
Can you talk about our seminary system and how the Cooperative Program supports our seminaries?
Once again, there's a portion of the Cooperative Program funds, the piggy bank that you referred to, goes to supplement the cost of any Southern Baptist student who goes to one of our Southern Baptist seminaries. You're a graduate of two of them.
Yes, Southwestern, which is in Fort Worth, Texas, and then Southern, which is in Louisville, Kentucky, which is an ironic name because you wouldn't think of that in the South.
That's right. Yeah, and I graduated from Southeastern, which is in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And let's see if we can get the rest of them. You have New Orleans Seminary, which is shockingly in New Orleans.
Yeah. Midwestern, which is in Kansas City, and then Golden Gate, which is do they have a physical campus anymore?
Gateway Seminary, not Golden Gate.
Yes, it's no longer Golden Gate.
They changed their name, and they are in Southern California.
Yeah.
And so these are all theological institutions that are making every effort to churn out pastors or missionaries so that the function of Southern Baptist churches will continue to work. And so I think one of the mistakes that we can fall into and at times have is we've recognized, okay, so the church matters, missions matter, but we've pushed the seminaries down. But the truth is that if we don't invest in our seminaries, we won't have anybody to be prepared to serve in those other roles.
Yeah. And the big deal in seminary life is in the 70s, what happened was called the conservative resurgence, that there was definitely debate back in that time about whether the SBC was going to go the way of many mainline denominations and take a more liberal bent in terms of theology, or go more conservative, and conservatism won out in the SBC. One of the touchstones was actually that the publishing company for the SBC published some commentaries on Genesis that actually doubted the historicity of some of the events of Genesis. And that was a big touchstone for the whole debate for the conservative resurgence. And so if you go to one of our seminaries now, they're all theologically sound. They're all very conservative in their theology, and great places to send your young people that are interested in ministry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In church history, there have only been two denominations that were drifting left, which is the normal drifting left theologically, and came back right. One of those is the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and then the second is SBC. And the SBC came back from a liberal drift to a conservative position. And let me just quickly say, anything you hear about SBC not being conservative today is flat out wrong.
100%.
Okay? We are very conservative theologically. There is no question about that. Really, the arguments today that are happening in SBC are totally different than what they were in the late 70s and early 80s. Today, it's about how conservative do we want to be?
Yeah.
And in which document do you want to state it?
And I think people are often confused because the term conservatism means something different in theology than in politics.
Yes, that's right.
We are, as a organization, an apolitical organization.
Or we should be.
Or we should be. We should be. Because, like you talked about last Sunday, this age and that age. I mean, we're looking forward to the age to come when every tribe, nation, and tongue fall down at the feet of Jesus and worship him as King of Kings.
That's right.
But when we talk about conservatism in terms of theology, we're talking about, is the Bible historically true? Is it the inerrant word of God? Can we trust the reliability of the Bible? And is it sufficient for all of our needs for life and godliness? And yes, it is all of those things.
That's right.
So as conservative churches, we believe those things, and we cannot cooperate with other churches that do not hold to the inerrancy of Scripture.
That's right.
I left one organization out of the questions, but let's talk about Lifeway. Mm-hmm. So the Southern Baptists do have a publishing arm, which is called Lifeway. If your kids are going to Vacation Bible School, even in non-SBC churches, Lifeway is kind of...
It's the thing.
It's the thing, because they have a theologically conservative Vacation Bible School. They also publish Sunday school materials. And I wouldn't say they've fallen on hard times, but I think that the publishing industry has radically changed with the internet. And so Lifeway has had to roll with the times. They've downsized a lot of operations. For those that are older, you remember that Lifeway had physical stores in every major metropolitan city, and recently they closed all those down just because everything's internet-based now.
All of that's true. The other piece that Lifeway is very well known for is their camps. I mean, you have Centrifuge and Missionfuge and all of that. And here in Indiana, it's this week, actually, Highland Lakes is having their first Fuge camp ever that is being done by Lifeway. And so I see that as something that is going to continue and only increase in the years to come. Those camps are very gospel-centered, gospel-oriented. And so those things are all very, very positive. Lifeway's president is Ben Mandrell. I do not believe that he's related to Barbara, but who knows?
Man, I hope so. If we ever have him here,
we're going to find that out. We're going to find that out.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So Ben Mandrell is the president of Lifeway, and he does a great job. But to your point, this is not an easy time to be in charge of books because most people are buying their books via Amazon. That's not changed even in the church world.
Yeah.
And so this is a hard time.
Yeah. But the home run for Lifeway definitely is Vacation Bible.
That's right.
They're virtually the only game in town.
Right.
Let's talk about the hot button one, which is probably the least known organization, which is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And it's probably the most controversial organization. I think most Southern Baptist churches in principle, they agree with International Mission Board, North American Mission Board, Lifeway, seminaries, they're all on board with that. But ERLC, the Religious Liberty Commission, is the one that stirs up some debate. So what does the ERLC do, and why is it controversial?
Well, I think it's controversial because it's political. So ERLC, Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, is the arm of the Southern Baptist Convention that is designed to give Southern Baptists a voice in the political realm.
Mm-hmm.
They are, if you would, our lobbying group. They are also to speak political truth back into our churches, give biblical advice about, for example, how do you handle gender issues in your church back to our churches. They are to stand for biblical truth among our senators and congressmen in the Capitol. And I think that where there has been difficulty on this topic is either the view has been that they have not done what they ought, or they have not done it well enough.
Right.
I would want everyone to know the percentage of the cooperative program that is received by them is by far the smallest.
Yes, it's not a big organization at all.
And the last 2 years, there have been 2 votes at the convention about disbanding.
It almost passed this year.
It almost passed. The decision was instead that the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission needs to, rather than disband, they simply need to improve. And if you would, rehabilitate to become the voice that they were designed to be. And I just don't find it shocking that if we're dealing with politics that it's controversial.
100%.
Okay.
And a lot of the things people disagree on are kind of the intramural type of things that are interesting, but it's like we're really not that far off on things. Like ERLC is part of lobbying against the abortion industry. But there's debates in the SBC about how much should we be against abortion? Should abortion be a crime punishable by law and by jail time, or should we be just pushing against abortion just in general?
To get in the weeds for just a minute, I mean, the incrementalist movement compared to the abolitionist movement basically says that you only have one choice, and that is to say that all abortion is wrong at all times. And by the way, I agree with that statement. And any law, this is where I would disagree, any law that doesn't say that is wrong. Well, I'm actually good with laws, personally, that make abortions go from 2 million to 1 million.
Right.
The abolitionist would say it's all or nothing. That's what the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission have to determine. Okay, well, where are we going to stand on this? And there is a level of they can't win.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to stand against the killing of babies, but they are in a difficult position.
Yeah, they certainly are.
Yeah.
Let's turn and let's talk about SCBI. So what is SCBI?
Yeah, so I did work for them. Your wife worked for them. That's
Yes.
the State Convention of Baptists in Indiana. There are 27, I believe that's right, 27 state conventions across our country. And those state conventions basically are within each state or region. Some of them are regions, like, for example, the Northwest Convention, Pennsylvania, Jersey is one convention. There's a New England group of convention of churches that are together. So you have all of these different groups that in some cases come together. They are our state, and we function together so that we have fellowship and we're able to reach Indiana for Christ. So in every state, a certain portion of your cooperative program dollars stay in your state to reach your state.
Well, let's discuss kind of the 2 major controversies in the SBC just very quickly.
Sure.
I don't want to spend a lot of time, but people hear about the SBC in the news. These are the 2 things that people hear about. Number 1 is the controversy about women pastors. And so this is kind of a debate that's of the ilk of who should be in the club.
Mm-hmm.
Should churches that have female pastors be a part of our group of SBC churches, or should they not? And to what extent can a woman be a pastor? Can a woman be a children's pastor? Can a woman be a pastor at all? And so these are the things that are being debated right now. And for those that are uninitiated, historically, there have been in the SBC churches with female lead pastors.
And I reckon, as you said, let's just talk for this for a minute or two, but this may be part 2.
Yeah, sure.
At another point. There was a motion that was made this year that would have gone into the constitution of our convention that would have removed all churches who had any woman as any pastor of any sort. And Dr. Jeff Org, who used to be the president of Gateway Seminary and is now the executive director of what's called the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee, he got up and he said, I just want to say that the argument is an argument among friends, and it is an argument almost from the same side. In other words, he gets up to explain both sides believe we should not have women pastors. The convention does not believe that the Bible allows for women to pastor churches. Our convention's not divided on that topic. The question is a little more of, should it be written in the Constitution of the Southern Baptist Convention? And that's when people argue a little bit, because then the question is, if you write that, well, what else are you going to write? We are already saying this in the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, which is our doctrinal statement. So why do we have to say it twice when we've already said it once? And so this is not about how many churches believe it's okay to have women pastors. No, that percentage is minuscule.
Right.
Now, the question about women as a children's pastor, women as a student pastor, women as a worship pastor, most churches who have gone down that path have simply become loose with the term pastor. And they need to be encouraged, challenged to think about the term, which is a biblical term that is reserved for men. Also, that shepherding within the church is the responsibility of elders who are men. And that's really where the convention is, but not every church has appropriately used the language.
Sure. And to lay my cards on the table, just so that people aren't mistaken. So I believe that pastorship is a male thing in the Bible. However, there are many churches, including the one that I grew up at, which was an SBC church, wouldn't have batted an eye at having a children's pastor who was a woman.
Right.
Or a youth pastor who was a woman. And the argumentation for them would be, this is not a position where a woman is teaching a man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a woman teaching children in the admonition of the Lord. And I understand that argument. I don't fall in line with that argument, but I think people need to understand this is where a lot of churches in the South have historically been.
That's right.
And so it's not so much of a lead pastor type of debate. It's more of, okay, so what do we do with some of our ladies who are serving the Lord well in these positions? I mean, we don't need to kick them out of their positions, but technically, are they biblically pastors or not?
I'm actually in the process of writing a book with Rachel that will probably be published in 2065. So
after Bobby's dead.
After I'm dead.
Yeah,
that's right.
Posthumous work.
But I mean, the book that I'm trying to write with her is a book that addresses the question of women in ministry. I'm a complementarian. Complementarians believe men are to be pastors. There's a difference between a man and a woman. They are not identical in every way. Now, that right there was an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. However, as a complementarian, I believe women have great fruitfulness and God has a great plan for them in ministry. And you can believe that and still be a complementarian.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at women in ministry, I try to think of it as a playground of opportunities rather than immediately point to the fencing of everything they can't do.
Right.
No, when I think of if a lady walks up to me and says, hey, how can I serve? I don't lead with, you can't be the pastor. I lead with, you want to serve, praise Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about all the things God can use you to do.
Right. And for those that may think we're hypocritical because we have women on staff, our women are not pastors.
Not pastors.
They are not shepherding people.
That's right.
They may be teaching women.
They should.
Directing in various roles in the church.
They should.
And they do a great job.
Yeah. I would even say Titus 2, they are teaching women. I'm not discipling women.
Right.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have some roles that you and I shouldn't be doing.
Sure. Yeah.
And praise the Lord that they're functioning in those healthy positions.
Yeah. I mean, if you and I are teaching a woman how to be a good mama, I mean, we may be a little bit out of our depth.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So the number 2 controversy is the sexual abuse controversy. There were some major bombshell revelations that happened a few years ago in terms of some pastors who were being passed from church to church to church who had committed and perpetrated acts of abuse and were being swept under the rug, and then another church would hire them. And so the discussion has been, okay, so how do we prevent that from happening? There's an epidemic of sexual abuse in all denominations because people are sinful people and people are tempted to do all sorts of wicked and vile things. And that's not to excuse it. It's happening and it needs to stop. And hopefully the SBC can be a part of helping that to stop. I think we're coming to the other side of that.
Yeah, I agree. There is no task force that prevents sin.
Right.
Okay. I think that what the task force ultimately did that will have the longest standing positive implications to our churches is basically handing our churches a plan for how to handle these issues going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our church has readdressed its policies on the topic of how we report and handle sexual abuse and how do we prevent it. I mean, we've looked at that as fresh as last year.
Yeah.
And I think Zach should be commended for presenting that to our staff before he left. So I think that just the fact that churches are all having to take a fresh look at this, that's the big win.
The biggest issue was not sexual abuse unto itself, which is a problem, granted. The issue that was the hot button topic was when you have a church that knowingly has someone that has committed an act of abuse and they're quietly fired to protect the church. And then that information is not given to another church down the road that potentially wants to hire that person as a candidate.
This goes back 20, 30 years. But those kinds of things were happening here in Evansville.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was not.
Okay.
In churches of any denomination, that was not uncommon.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just wrong.
Right.
That is just wrong. And I think it's fair to say that's not going to happen at Northwoods. And I don't believe that it's likely to happen at any of our Southern Baptist churches in comparison to what was true 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. I think that the hard thing that happens often is when somebody hasn't been convicted of something, and it's hard to find in background checks and things like that, which is why we as Southern Baptist churches need to be communicative with each other in terms of our employees and staff and what's going on in our churches and not just kind of sweep things under the rug. So other than that, SBC, we're a happy family.
We are. I'm glad to be a part of the Southern Baptist Convention. We don't have Baptist on our sign for a reason. And it's not because we are ashamed of being Southern Baptist, but we actually have, I would guess, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 to 1 of people who come to our church who do not have a Baptist background.
Yep.
And not having it on the sign makes people come in that wouldn't.
And have different expectations about our worship.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so that's a very intentional act. Once you come in, I'm not ashamed of being Southern Baptist. I'll tell you we're Baptist. I'll refer to it in sermons. We'll refer to it in announcements. Not ashamed of it in any way. You come to our Northwoods class, you'll learn it within 15 minutes of us talking. However, it's not on the sign for a reason.
Yeah.
We're trying to remove every barrier from Jesus and the cross, except Jesus and the cross.
Right. I don't think as a Northwoods, we grab a lot of people that come from other SBC churches.
I agree.
Because they come in and they have a certain expectations of worship style or preaching style, and this ain't it.
No, and many of those who do come don't stick.
All right, Bobby, thank you for your time. And if you have any more SBC questions, please feel free to talk to us. We don't want you to feel like you're joining a church and you're a fish out of water.
That's right.
In terms of knowing what's going on or how process works. And this podcast is an effort to help with that.
That's great.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the